tomorrow is D-Day, where 3 important sessions will be taking place at the G20. Let me give you a sense of what the weekend's agenda will look like. In fact, session 1 tomorrow, and I had that conversation with Ntanda Katlana just before we went to the break there, will focus on inclusive and sustainable economic growth, as well as building economies and the role of financing there. Importantly, that session will see a presentation of 3 very important documents. The first of which is the African Expert Panel Report. The President received this report earlier on in the week from former South African Finance Minister Trevor Manuel, who was an integral player in putting together that report. Now, that is the presentation that will be presented tomorrow to all heads of state in that session. It will then be followed by the Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts on Global Wealth Inequality. Really important, particularly when we focus our conversation on the African debt burden and the global debt burden. So that's what's coming up tomorrow. In fact, that will be session 1. They'll then break at around 2 o'clock for bilateral meetings, a working lunch, so to speak. They'll then come back after that break for session 2. And session 2 will be focusing on a resilient world and the G20's contribution towards disaster risk reduction, climate change, and the just energy transition. No real important specific presentations in that session. And then day 3. This is the final session before, of course, that declaration will be read out and will be adopted, and that will lead us to the close of it. But on day 3, session 3 rather, on day 2, which is on Sunday, that will focus on a fair and a just future for all critical minerals, decent work, and artificial intelligence. And that's that conversation that I think most of the African nation states and states in the global south will be particularly interested in, particularly on the conversation around critical minerals. So that is where the conversation will flow over the next 2 days. But where does this all come from? Where did it all really start? And I want to take you back to the inception of the G20. Really important that we get a sense of where it comes from and how it's developed over the years. It was founded in 1999, and this is after that 1997 Asian financial crisis. And the question they had to answer there was, how do we prevent this from repeating itself once again? And so, informally, a group of governors of central banks and finance ministers began to meet to have that conversation. And that part of the conversation was really about the capital markets, resilient economies to absorbing external shocks, and so that we don't see that sort of recessionary impact once again. You then recall, not many years thereafter, in 2008, we then had another global recession, and this time it was the bonds and housing market that had collapsed, and so the G20 found particularly more importance there. And then it started to expand its agenda, inviting in heads of state, because then it became an important engagement, and it's now one of the foremost multilateral bodies in the world. And it then elevated over time, as I explained to you just now, where it was about the global economic and the financial crisis of 2007 and 2009. It then upgraded to a forum where heads of state and government began to attend it, and then it is where it is now, where G20 at 20, where it is the premier forum for international economic cooperation around the world. You would know that there's a much smaller body also called the G7, which is where all the G7 member states, in fact, form a part of the G20. And within the G20, some of the BRICS member states are a part of that. China, India, Brazil becoming top of mind there. In fact, India, Brazil, and South Africa have, it's called IBSA for short. They have a really important engagement on the sidelines taking place Sunday morning, where they'll be announcing some other levels of specific cooperation between Brazil, India, and South Africa. And of course, we'll hear from the president and the related ministers about that on Sunday morning. But that's where we are now. And of course, this weekend, there's a lot of information that's going to be flowing out of those chambers at Nasrec, and we'll try to keep you abreast of it all as it unfolds.